Jerone Davison, Kelly Cooper, and Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. Based on the drawing of the straws, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, you have the first opening statement, 2 minutes.
Thank you. We have a country to save. I'm Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. I'm the son of Syrian immigrants who escaped a dictatorship in Syria and taught me that I could be more free in America to practice my faith and speak than I could in any other country in the world. My family and I have raised 3 kids. My wife, Gada, and I have 3 kids, 2 in college and 1 in high school. We're worried about the legacy. We're worried about our country. We are at the edge of a cliff thanks to the radicalization of the Democratic Party and rubber stampers for Biden's policies like Greg Stanton. When you put your head on the pillow at night, you're probably worried about all the things that I am. The hemorrhaging borders, the crime, the drugs, the consumption of our resources. Also, what are the solutions? As a doctor in primary care, I run my own business. I have been a small businessman and also taken care of families through Mesa, Tempe, Chandler, and Scottsdale. And I want to take care of the body politic. I've been battle vetted and battle tested. I've taken on massive establishments both inside the country and across the planet. Appointed to the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, taken on radical Islam, and my family and I paid a big price for that, targeted by Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and others. I've stepped towards that fire. I've also stepped towards the fire against the medical establishment during the pandemic, one of the few voices for the voiceless, standing for medical freedom, academic freedom, standing for parental rights for the no reason that we kept our kids home during the pandemic when they should have been in school. I want to take that legacy and represent our district in CD4. There is hope. We need candidates that can bring hope, bring leadership, and I ask for your support in this movement. There is a movement behind my campaign. Be a part of it. Thank you.
And Dr. Giles, apologies. Even though we talked about it right before air, I mispronounced your name. Dr. David Giles, you have the next 2 minutes for your opening.
Oh, okay. What I'm sure all of you are looking to know is, what are you going to expect to get out of your representative when you send him to D.C.? A couple of orders of business. I want to work with other representatives in Congress and in Senate to finish building the border wall. And it's not just finish the border wall. I mean seal the border wall. Nobody gets across. You go down to the nearest port of entry and you cross there. That's one order of business. Second order of business is we get this economy back on track. We stop with the regulations that are hurting our economy. We get that XL pipeline opened back up again. We start drilling for our oil in Alaska. We need to become back to the energy leader in the world. We can do this. We were that way before. We need to return to that level, and that will bring the economy back in line, lower our inflation, maybe even reverse it just a little bit. One other thing I wanted to talk about is our Constitution. The Constitution under the 10th Amendment says anything not specified in here or denied in here reverts back to the states or the people, okay? The Department of Education is not here. It belongs back. We got to stop the D.C. people from telling us how to raise our kids, how to train our kids, stop indoctrinating our kids. Most important there. And another one is to change our, I'm going to say immigration for the lack of a little bit of something better. But we need to stop and start counting our citizens in our census. It's an unfair advantage for cities to count other nationalities, other countries' people in a census. It gives them an unfair weighted advantage over the other states in the country. Thank you very much for your time.
And now that I messed up his name, I also realize I messed up the order in my rush to correct his name. We'll get it right at the end. Kelly Cooper, you have the next opening statement. 2 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you very much. You know, Arizona, this is my opportunity to introduce myself to you, and tonight you're going to be treated to a panel of great candidates and people that I believe in their heart and soul want to do the best they can for this district. Myself, I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I've served all over the world. Been deployed on an hour's notice to go guard borders in other countries, just like we need to solve that problem here in our country. I'm a husband and father of two. My young children deserve the American dream that we all expect to be able to pass on to our families. I'm a small business owner, and I'm responsible for the support and creation of hundreds of jobs in this state and in this district. And when it comes to my credentials, they far exceed everyone else on this stage in solving the problems that are facing you and your families today. You see, for me, I believe the American dream is a fading dream. And whether you are a kid coming out of college, looking to start your family and start your life and struggling with the idea of owning a home or purchasing a home, or you're a young family starting to raise your kids and looking at the prospect of not being able to afford decent education or gas and groceries, or whether you're on a fixed income and you're having to decide between your medicine and your rent, I am your candidate that understands the plight you're facing today, and I will fight tirelessly, as I've done for the last presented in Congress. I thank you for taking the time to listen and pay attention to us. My name's Kelly Cooper, and I will be fighting for your American dream and mine. Thank you very much.
And our final opening statement?
And mine. Thank you very much.
And our final opening statement, Mr. Davison.
God bless you. Good evening, Arizona. First, I give honor to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and to express my profound gratitude for having the privilege of being a citizen of the greatest nation in the world. My name is Jerone Davison, a father of 5, the grandfather of 3, former Arizona State running back, former fullback for the Oakland Raiders. But for the last 3 decades, I've been serving as a pastor faithfully, joyfully, and I'm excited to be here before you tonight. America is at a crossroads, not only because of political division, but because of a spiritual battle that is raging between good and evil. And we need strong leaders in Congress who will deal with that. I'm the only candidate on the stage tonight that has the courage and the charisma to deal with the challenges that we're facing in Washington. I'm the only candidate on the stage tonight that is willing to offer an immigrant moratorium. The only candidate that's willing to defund the Ukraine or not fund the Ukraine war. The only candidate that's looking to score an A+ rating with the NRA. This is why I believe that the Democrats are going to disguise themselves as independents and pull a Republican ballot for one of my opponents. But we need strong, bold leaders right now in this hour who are willing to stand with the President Donald Trump America First policies. Why? Because we know they work. The policies are going to work. And we need bold people that are going to stand with that. Some of my opponents are refusing to say his name, but that's okay. That's their fight. My battle is to secure the border, to lower the soaring cost of gas, food, and rent, and to ensure that your needs may have preeminence and priority over any and all foreign wars, have preeminence and priority over all illegal aliens. And consider my 30 years as pastoring not only as experience, but consider it my commitment to the community.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Stand with me, Arizona.
And let's get right to questions. Dr. Jasser, we'll start with you on the economy. What can Congress do? What could you as a congressman do to lower inflation?
You know, as I talk to families in my practice, I can tell you that government can get out of the way. The American dream is dwindling because we're seeing continued pressures from inflation as costs go up. I've talked to patients that have to do 3 jobs to make ends meet like they used to 5-6 years ago, and it's all been because of Biden policies. I'm the only person on this stage that signed the Americans for Tax Reform pledge that I would never raise taxes. We need to continue the Trump tax cuts that are due to expire in 2025. Greg Stanton will likely vote against that. So if you want growth, it is time that we talk about economic growth. We need members of Congress that can work towards growth. We need to talk about a fixed tax rate. I've supported a 15% flat tax. And rather than have a member of Congress like Stanton that wants to rubber stamp 87,000 IRS agents to go after Americans, why not help them grow their businesses and create incentives for rebuilding businesses and working in small businesses? I'm one of the only ones that signs the front of my checks for my employees. And I stayed open throughout the pandemic. The pandemic shut down a lot of businesses, and there was no reason for that. Patients, and I can tell you as a physician, we should have not made choices for families and businesses that ended up affecting the economy. And now we're seeing it as debt goes way up and the costs of living go also way up.
Mr. Cooper, would you support continuing the Trump tax cuts? How would they help people in the district?
Yeah, so that's a great question. The Trump's tax cuts that are set to expire in 2025, and very true that Greg Stanton will very likely vote against them, are all reductions in the cost it takes to run any business, to support any new job growth. And I am 100% not only in support of the Trump tax cuts, I will vote to make sure that they are continued on, especially considering the 20% tax cut that goes to small business, which is truly the backbone of our economy that's really being hurt the most today.
Dr. Giles, your thoughts on inflation and the tax cuts?
First off, get government out of the way. A lot of these regulations, they're not in here. Again, the get regulations out of the way, get our Excel pipeline working back again, get our country flowing, get the economy back online. But mostly, get the government out of the way. Taxes are too high. I'm in favor of reducing taxes, continuing the tax cuts, yes, and continuing the tax cuts for some of the businesses as well, because they're the ones that hire people, employ people, and put food on the table. So we need lower taxes. We got to stop printing money, is one thing we need to do. We need to stop spending wasteful. We have a spending problem. We're sending money to countries that people that hate us. We got to stop doing that as well. We need to take care of our own people. Stop taxing our people and start supporting them, and stop giving away our money wastefully to other countries that hate us, don't appreciate us, when we have homeless, when we have veterans, people here that need our help. It's America first. It's back to MAGA again. And I supported President Trump since the day he walked down that escalator. Look at my website. I had dinner with him, and he signed the photograph for me.
Mr. Davison, tax cuts, the economy. He mentioned housing. Does the federal government have a role in trying to reduce the cost of housing, especially for first-time home buyers?
Yes, absolutely. I do believe we have that because we control the purse in Congress. And I think getting the economy going is very simple. Renew those oil drilling contracts that the Democrats say that are not there. And the only reason most people are not grabbing those drilling contracts is because of all the government stipulations. They apply for it. It's going to take them maybe 5 or 6 years to get it. And they got to pay a whole bunch of dollars and money to get that. So I believe it's very, very simple. I believe that we need to drill. We need to frack. We need to burn coal. We have the cleanest burning coal in the world, and it's very cheap. I believe that we need to embrace nuclear energy. It's very effective. It's very powerful. It's going to get the economy going again. Yes, I do believe that we need to extend the Trump tax cuts from the corporate down to the mom and pop stores, give the mom and pop businesses 3-year incentives, tax cuts. And every time that they employ a new person, they give them an extra tax cut. But these are the incentives that's going to cause the American people to feel hope again. America's going to be revived economically, and then we'll start booming.
But specifically, very briefly, is there a role in reducing, can the government do something to reduce housing costs? Or is
Yes,
that a free
absolutely.
market?
We got to close the border. See, there's not a housing crisis, and there's not a housing shortage. There's only because we have a large influx of new people that have not naturally grown into this country. Yes, we also have to stop BlackRock and other foreign countries like China for buying property here. That's going to keep the prices of houses down. That's what we can do in Congress.
Dr. Jasser, the affordable housing crisis.
I think one of the things that I talk to families is how many times they have gone to buy a house and then they see that taken out from under them as their loan gets approved by a foreign entity. I can, as a congressman, on day one, say that we are going to make it illegal for foreign countries to buy property here without appropriate approvals at all. And I think ultimately that is buying properties out from under our families in our district across Mesa, Tempe, and Chandler.
Dr. Giles, is that the answer? Affordable housing.
Well, first off, cut some taxes out of that. Property taxes are killing us. And a lot of these places keep taxing more. The cities keep taxing more, and they keep spending more. And back to the spending problem. If we cut the housing taxes, people can afford housings. And stop with that phony incentive that got a lot of people to buy houses that they couldn't afford. Help people buy houses they can afford. Cut their taxes. Educate them. No dumb sheep.
This is a big issue in the district, as there's a lot of families wishing to buy houses in the district. What would you do to help them?
Yeah,
Or
it was
can you?
part of my opening statement is to talk about the housing crisis and what it is to come out of college and try to own a home and really find out that you have to have 10 friends to go in and purchase a home with you. It's great that the other candidates on this stage talk about idealistic views about what they think they can do to solve those problems, but really the number one issue that we can do to solve the housing crisis in this country is let the states be their states. Let them handle the issues that are there. We have to get back to energy independence, energy dominance in this country so we can reduce inflation, which is up 20% since the start of the Biden administration. We have to look at all the different things that we can do from a federal government to reduce the burden of regulation that's being weighed down on the people in this district so that the state can take action to control and reduce the housing costs that are coming up today.
We're going to move to immigration. We'll start with you, Dr. Jasser. What is the best way to reform the asylum process in this country? Is the asylum process something worth preserving? And I'll ask the follow-up now, because I imagine everyone's going to weigh in. Are people who come into this country and claim asylum, do you consider them being in the country legally?
I can speak to this for sure because my parents came here as political refugees from Syria and got legal asylum, asking for it before they came and getting it a few months later from their member of Congress. I grew up in Wisconsin. I can tell you ultimately that this is not, immigration should be legal. This is about folks that are rushing in illegally, lawlessness. And yes, if you look at my 8-point plan at z4az.com, you'll see a prescription for reform. Number one is sealing the border. Number two, I call for a deportation of Biden's illegals. We've had 6 to 12 million come across the border in the last 4 to 5 years, and ultimately that is lawlessness, is bringing drugs, trafficking, and so many other things, and making it, I think, an embarrassment that we think that we have people that are actually waiting in line to come here, and yet they're rushing across in the thousands every day. And ultimately, this is how, and if we look at reform, we've talked about asylum, we should reform that and have people ask before they come in the country, rather than passing through 3 countries in the country they come through. And if you look at the website, for example, of Mr. Cooper, he has on his website, it says, result of broken system migrants must live in the shadows. I mean, that language is language that could come from Biden, could come from Gallego, it could come from Stanton. This is not the type of border policy. We need to be clear, because this is the number one issue that's affecting voters. They're worried about the destruction of this state from people coming in illegally. It's a privilege to come here, and my parents came here legally, and so many people want to come here legally, and they should do so with a government that enforces the law. We need to renew congressional authority on that.
I was going to go down the line, but
No,
you
but we're
invoked
coming
your
over
name.
here
He
because you
invoked
know
your
you
name,
have to.
Mr. Cooper.
So it's great that Zuhdi wants to cherry pick my statements on my website and not talk about in context the entire view. But I'm sure that all of the voters can go to my website, kellycooperarizona.com, and read what I actually stand for. It's pretty clear that what's happening today, and honestly, Zuhdi over here can't really quote the right numbers. We're up to 17 million illegal migrants in this country today. That's a burden on not only your education system and your healthcare system, but the social safety net that all of us rely on in case we were to run into trouble. Like, I don't know, what's happened over the last 3 or 4 years. The idea that we just want to have people come in here and live under the shadows is ridiculous. But I will say that what Biden has done at our border has created a humanitarian crisis. People do come into this country legally. They have to wait a long period of time before they can do anything else. And then they're stuck trying to figure out how they make their family work. And then you have the Biden administration telling people to come illegally. Rush the border, he said. And all of the people came. And now they're here, and they should be deported. I think you're exactly right, Zuhdi. They shouldn't have been here in the first place. Our border should be secure, and all those folks should be sent home. But they are here. They can't have jobs, and that's why you see rising crime, because people are stuck without the ability to manage for themselves. And that lies right at the feet of the Biden administration, endorsed by Greg Stanton on an everyday basis.
Back to you, Dr. Giles. The asylum process, how do we reform it? And do you consider those who come to this country and claim asylum as being here legally?
That's 2 parts. First part is asylum needs to be done in their home country at the American Embassy, United States Embassy. That's where the asylum should be given, granted there. Once granted, put it on a plane and fly them in. illegal immigration, your second part?
Are the people who come to this country and claim asylum, are they taking part in a legal process or not?
If they came across illegally, not through a port of entry, they are illegals. They haven't followed the rule of law, and they should be deported. We should get our border secure, yes. Not just finish the border wall, but seal it. And when I say seal the border wall, I mean 0 people come across. Our Border Patrol people should just point them one way, left, east, west, to the nearest port of entry and follow the laws that are at the port of entry. Court cases, you don't just let them in. You have their court hearing right there on the spot and make them wait outside until they get it done. So asylum in their home countries, we should deport all of people who came across not through a port of entry. Get them out. They're burdening our, this has been said before, they're burdening our education, they're burdening our medical, they're burdening everything, and we're paying for them to have a free lunch.
So speeding them up as they
Let's go
wait
back
outside.
on one last
And I'm
topic.
sure the clean elections people are checking to see if that's a prop. I'm probably going to hear in my ear, because we agreed no props, but
Oh,
we'll see.
what
But Mr. Davison, your thoughts on the asylum process?
All right, well, let me first say that people are always stating that America is a country of immigrants. I say that it's not. I say that America is a country of citizens. We are a country of laws, and those laws are meant to be obeyed. When people come across that border and they come illegally, they have disobeyed the law and they have become illegal. But once you come through the process, which we have called immigration, we have an Immigration Act. And one of the things that Biden is doing and has done is that he's bypassed Congress. Congress every year annually is supposed to sit down with the President of the United States and discuss the number of refugees and asylum seekers that we will allow into this country. But he has not done that. He has broken the law, and he should be impeached for that. The American people are suffering behind this influx of millions of people who are overtaking their housing, overtaking their food and crime, home invasions, many things. Immigration is wonderful. I believe that we should have extra judges for immigration courts to make sure that the process speeds along. But when people come in like they're coming in, they're only being used as puppets for the Democrats to have Democrat votes and to get extra seats in Congress and to overflow the voting process.
Sticking with you, staying on immigration, what do we do with the people who came here as children, who now have gone to college, maybe started families or gotten careers here?
I think that's a great question. Now, here's the deal. If I won this seat by fraud, and I'm in Congress for at least 6 years, but yet my fraud is discovered, should I remain in Congress or should I be removed? If people have come into this country illegally, and I'm a pastor, I love people. I love you, and I know people are coming here seeking the American dream. But this is too much on the American citizens, and we have to consider our citizens and their needs first. I'm an America First guy, and that's what I stand on.
I think that's an important distinction that needs to be made. This is about America first. You know, we talk about all the people that are coming here illegally, and we talk about the people that have struggled to come up from South and Central America, but we are a nation of laws, and we must hold to those laws. That's what a constitutional republic is. So the folks that have come here illegally should go home. We should institute remain in Mexico while asylum claims are being looked at. We should make sure that law and order is held true in this country if we want the values of America to continue forward. And really what those migrants are attempting to come here for is looking for that foundation of truth. And it's been taken away. The Biden administration has completely dismantled what we know of as security as a nation, and what we all know is a nation without borders is no nation at all. Whether it's the northern border, the southern border, whether it's using the CVP app and chartering flights from their home country straight in, the Biden administration is using this invasion to take your tax dollars and funnel them to the cartels that are trafficking people into our country.
You're the doctor of theology. I'll ask you for the biblical or the theological-based answer to the immigration and what we've been talking about, especially with children.
You were talking about the children that were brought in here as babies, okay, 6, 7 years old. Now they've gone to school. They got maybe a college degree or two. They've been here 18 years. They know English. They know the American history. If they don't want to apply for citizenship and get their American history, maybe we should reevaluate letting them stay here. If you don't want to be a citizen, send them back home to where they came from. There is a path to citizenship already there. We don't have to create a new one. We don't have to have forgiveness. Just follow the path that's there and let them be citizens. Now, if they all went out tomorrow and applied for citizenship, great, let them stay. They're in the process of following through becoming a citizen.
Dr. Jasser, your thoughts on the children the immigrants who came here as children?
Listen, as my friends have said, we are a country of laws, so I would allow due process to work its way through. I've had many family members and also people that worked for me that have had their cases go through court for 20 years as their kids were at ASU waiting to see if they were going to be deported because they did it legally and they did it through the court system. But it's a bit gaslighting for the left to be asking us about the children of children when we have tens of thousands rushing through every day by a radicalized Democratic Party. And the current member of Congress, Greg Stanton, was for making Phoenix a sanctuary city that allowed the lawless to come in and then be protected in cities like Phoenix when he was mayor of Phoenix. So let's retire Greg Stanton. And I can tell you as an expert in radicalization that while I've confronted radical Islam and terrorists and other groups across the world, we see the radicalization of the Democratic Party across campuses as we see people chanting for Hamas on student visas that should be deported immediately for violating material support of terror laws. And that's not anything that Greg Stanton has talked about. And actually, Rashida Tlaib came to raise money for Students for Justice in Palestine, and Greg Stanton would not vote for a bill to basically censure her, which I think speaks to his radicalization.
And we will get to foreign policy in a bit. One more briefly on immigration, and I'll give everyone a chance on this. Mr. Cooper, what does a secure border look like, and can you point to a time in history when the border was effectively sealed?
Well, I think that you can look back at the last administration and say that the border was effectively sealed.
COVID helped a little bit.
Well, okay, you could say that COVID helped a little bit, but the policies of the Trump administration was remain in Mexico. So it was discouraged people coming here. So when they did come here and they were put back in a foreign land and not just automatically asylumed into our country, they stopped coming at the rates that they're coming. It wasn't encouraged. There wasn't a benefit to come. You weren't getting free rent and housing assistance from the governments. But you asked a question, and I think it's really important that we all answer this. You asked about the children. And my answer is, what about our children? You asked about the children and what it means for those people to be looking for a better life. But my children are looking for a better life. Your children are looking for a better life. The children of this district are looking for a better life. And I don't think we can go past that, because the government's job, number one, is to secure our nation and provide a prosperous environment for us to grow as families. There is nothing more important than that.
Mr. Davison, is there a number or a metric you would say this is what a secure border looks like?
A secure border means no people coming across it. Remember how we got here, though. Let's think about that. President Donald Trump, when he was in office, was talking about build the wall. The people shouting at the rallies, build the wall. And President Donald Trump had the House and the Senate. But because we had weak Republicans in Washington, we could not get to building the wall. We couldn't get the funding for it. And President Donald Trump must have saw this day coming, that Biden would stand up and say, come to the border, and those people have come in here, and they're costing us billions of dollars a day. A secure border means the border is closed for any crossers, and any crossers who cross that border must be deported immediately. And we must focus on the citizens of the United States. And that's what I'm going to do. When I get in Congress, I'm going to support the President Donald Trump policies, the remaining Mexico policies, and not only that, but the Title 42 is not only for COVID, but it deals with these foreign diseases that are coming in here now that America's dealing with. Some of these diseases we haven't seen in 10 and 20 and 30 years. And so we have to bring that back.
Dr. Giles, is 0 people coming across realistic?
Not in the port of entry. Yes, 0 is where we should be at. Not at no, but even if we have to have all of our military out there, elbow to elbow, all the way along that border. If you want to come into America, go to the port of entry and come in following the rules there. But 0 is what it was. And you talked about when it was ever secure. Well, I think it was secure, like 100 years ago, when our military went up to Mexico City because Mexico was giving us a problem.
Dr. Jasser, what does a secure border look like in your mind?
I can tell you as a physician, an artery that is somewhat 90% closed is still hemorrhaging. So at the end of the day, a sealed border means nobody comes in unless they have permission. And if you look at 9/11, was committed by the vast majority of those 19 came into our country and committed an act of terror. And there's been hundreds and hundreds that are on the list of foreign terror organizations that are of concern, known unknowns that we don't know where they are, and ultimately can affect our national security. All it takes is one. And for me to say, listen, I was a Navy doc for 11 years. I went to Somalia. We went in missions across the world. And while we fought to keep other places free, to tell me we can't seal our own border, we have the technology to do it. We just don't have the will, and a radicalized Democratic Party wants to see that erode the underbelly of American freedom. And if we love our country, if we love this country, we will seal it and allow people to get permission to come in, just like my parents came here.
We'll change to foreign policy, specifically Israel. We'll start with you, Mr.
Sure.
Cooper. How do you feel about how Israel is conducting its war against Hamas in Gaza, and should funding for Israel be tied to how Israel conducts itself?
Yeah, that's a great question. I really appreciate that you asked that. Israel, just like everybody else in every region in the world, should be responsible for defending themselves. I said this over and over and over again, that America isn't responsible for the blood and treasure that is spent all over the world. Would I say that we should tie funds to Israel based on how Israel acts? No, I don't. I think that Israel is responsible for defending themselves, and we don't have a say in how that's done. But I would also say that we don't have a responsibility anywhere in the world to be sending our own blood and treasure. I'm a Marine and I've served all over the world, and I can tell you, and I'm sure Dr. Jasser will tell you the same thing, none of us will wish for our own brothers and sisters to be sent into harm's way under almost any circumstances. And there are way too many problems at home for us to be sending money anywhere else in the world.
Mr. Davison, your thoughts on how Israel is conducting its war?
Well, there you see the vicissitudinous disposition of my opponent. He changed his position on the wars. I'm talking about Cooper. He was talking about supporting Ukraine a few months ago at a debate, and now he's talking about that we shouldn't send it out.
That's just not true. Jerome.
Well, it is true. I got it on video.
Well, let him
I
finish.
have it on video.
No, you're not going to do
Mr.
Go ahead.
Cooper,
It's
Show
on
let
video.
him finish a minute,
And I'll
you'll
share it
respond.
on my website.
Well, I really don't like people slandering me on
Yeah, it's
on
not slander.
TV.
It's the truth.
But
It's
it's
on
not the
video.
truth.
It's on PBS. He said that
Sure, go watch
he
it.
called Ukraine allies, and he said that we can't cut off funding immediately, and he said he wanted to continue funding them. That was the truth. I'm not going to tell a lie on the man. It's on video.
Your thoughts on how Israel is conducting its war?
Israel is conducting the war as they should. Israel has the right to protect themselves, and I believe America should stand beside them just in case they need our assistance. I believe in America first, but Israel is our ally and not Ukraine. Ukraine isn't our ally, but Israel is our ally, and they should defend themselves, especially now that Iran is attacking them and they need our support. They have been a steadfast brother of ours supporting us, and we need to support them in such a time as this.
We'll allow you to respond, and we'll get to you too.
that'd be great.
Back on Israel, your thoughts? Did you shift your position on Ukraine?
No, my position has never changed. I don't believe that we should send blood and treasure anywhere else in the world. What I said on PBS, and I'll repeat it today, we cannot abandon our friends and allies on the world stage. Isolationism is not an answer to world politics. America, as I said on PBS, has the responsibility of being a world superpower. That means that we have to flex our influence to make regional powers be in control of regional wars and be responsible for the blood and treasures that are spent in regional conflicts. That does not mean that America is responsible for that. America has the responsibility of flexing the leverage of having those people in those regions handle that.
We will get through Israel before we come back to Ukraine. Dr. Giles, your thoughts on how Israel is conducting its war?
Well, it's Israel. They are God's chosen people. We don't curse them. We don't cause them harm. We help them when we can. Even when you talk about, I've already stated, we should stop sending our monies to overseas to countries that hate us. But Israel's not one that hates us. And if we did stop sending money to Israel, there's enough people here who will send donations directly to Israel. And guess what? They'll get the government out of the way, and they'll be better off for it. So, as far as how they're conducting the war, was it a couple weeks back, a couple months back, when Iran shot 350 missiles, drones, or something into Israel? How do you think it would happen if Israel shot 350 drones and missiles into Tehran?
Dr. Jasser, how was your thoughts on how Israel's conducting its war?
Yeah, I'm actually so glad to hear Mr. Cooper's description, because I want the voters to really go back and listen to that, because ultimately he just doesn't get it. Israel was attacked on October 7, which none of my colleagues here on the stage have mentioned, October 7, where it was equivalent to 50 to 100 times 9/11. And ultimately, genocidal Hamas soldiers went across the border into Israel and slaughtered and beheaded children, infants, elderly, and others. This was a horrific act of war, and what they're doing now is ultimately finally defeating Hamas. This is a just war, no different than our war was just when we went to Afghanistan to defeat the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. So ultimately, this is about anti-Semitism. It's about context. My colleagues can't seem to articulate and understand what's happening, why the West is at stake. Israel is a little America in the Middle East surrounded by enemies. And if we're going to continue to have people, and what you're seeing here is just more Greg Stantons. Greg Stanton can't seem to articulate what is at stake and why Israel needs to be defended, just sits on his hands as he's being protested by the radicalized fringe of his party. And yet we need to defend Israel because they stand against anti-Semitism, and the anti-Semitism we see across campuses has been funded by Qatar, by China, and all of our enemies. So this is an existential crisis that we're feeling right now, and we need to be leaders in that, not just simply say nothing is important.
Let's move to Ukraine, as you wish to do, and a question on it. Would you have voted to keep Speaker Johnson? The battle on that was partially funding the war in Ukraine. How do you feel about our funding in Ukraine? Do you support Speaker Johnson in that effort?
Well, absolutely. I want to get to that question, but first I want to address Dr. Jasser's. Dr. Jasser seems to think that all of America is under attack by radical Muslims. We're not concerned about radical Muslims. We're concerned about radical Democrats and radical Democrat policies that are destroying this country. And let me tell you this. America is not concerned about radical Muslims on our country, because we have the Second Amendment that will deal with that. Wow. But we are worried about the Democrat policies that are destroying this country. Now, would I vote for Speaker Johnson? I would have voted to get him out of there, because he turned his back on America, and he funded not only the Ukraine war when he said he wouldn't, but he funded abortion up to birth, and that's why he needed to be gone.
Let's forget Ukraine for a second. He said that radical Democrats are more dangerous to this country than radical Muslims. Your thoughts, Mr. Jazz?
The radicalization process is similar, and for him to separate this out bespeaks to a basic misunderstanding of what's happening to our children across campuses. They're waving flags about Palestine. They don't even know where Gaza is on a map. But yet ultimately, the movement is a neo-Marxist jihadist sort of amalgam of radicalization, which is very similar. Why? Because the DEI wokeness, the CRT, critical race theory wokeness that created the Black Lives Matter movement and other movements that he's trying to talk about, that destroyed many cities and so many businesses, is about a destruction of the foundations of America. And the Islamists join them in that. There's a red-green axis of the far left and the Islamists working together, just like in the UN, the Irans of the world work with the Chinas. The radical Islamists, which is a quarter of the world's population, also work with the radical far-left progressivists. That is what we're seeing in campuses, and what my friend Jerone Davison was trying to articulate. But this is why we need people. We need people in Congress that get it and can hit the ground running to take this on. And I can be an antidote to the Rashida Tlaibs and Ilhan Omars on day one.
About a minute. That's how much everyone's about getting for their reply, and I'm tracking it.
Yes.
Mr. Davison, he invoked your name. You get about a minute.
Okay, let me just say, Jerone Davison for Congress. You need somebody like me who knows what's going on. The radical Muslim movement, that Palestinian thing just happened. But what has been taking place in our country and in our schools and in our border has been Democrat policy. He just said it again. And then he threw in the Islamic stuff with the Palestine movement. We are facing radicalized Democrats, and they need to be removed, along with Greg Stanton, who is supporting it 100%. It is the Democrat policies that is the danger to this country. I know what's going on, and I have articulated this point, and that's why he stole my point. And he continues to do that. But I'm Jerone Davison for Congress, and support me. I will fight for you.
I'll let you weigh in on Ukraine or the radicalization of Democrats and or Muslim.
I spent 22 years in Saudi Arabia living and working there, so I know a little bit about the Islamic faith. It's inconsistent with our Constitution. That's all. I'll leave it at that. Let you guys look around and find out what it is. But as far as the funding of Ukraine, Johnson's done a couple of other things that have gotten me, and probably all of the people come together. He did not provide the funding bills that he promised to do. He went with a bill, continuing resolution. Wrong. At that point, he should be taken out. However, it would hurt our country to do that at this point. We need to be unified together and look at America first and get Congress together to make these funding bills and do their job. That's what they're there. That's the first thing that they're supposed to do. And not fund what's not in here.
The prop again. Let's get local. The Republic has reported there's a group of affluent teenagers, one known as the Gilbert Goons, beating up other teens. One teenager, Preston Lord, died in one of those beatings. What do you see as the cause? We'll start with you, Mr. Cooper. What do you see as the cause of such youth violence in East Valley suburbs? And is there a role for Congress to do anything?
Sure, yeah. Enforce the law. The Gilbert Goons are an example of exactly what happens when law is undermined on a regular basis. Every single day, whether it's at the border or in your community, you see laws being subverted or undermined and not enforced. You see it from your attorney generals across the country. You see it from Greg Stanton, who, Jasser was right. Zuhdi correctly pointed out that Greg Stanton was the one of the original mayors that attempted to make Phoenix a sanctuary city. But what he didn't say is that Greg Stanton is also the original defund the police mayor, and in 2012 froze police hirings while crime and population were rising for the next 6 years. Law and order and the lack of law and order and enforcing laws is exactly how we got to this point. And the Gilbert Goons is a picture of what happens when you don't enforce the laws.
Pastor Davison, youth violence.
Youth violence, we need to get back to parenting. Parenting is the problem. Yes, we can go to dealing with law and order and AGs, but we got to get parents in homes. We need fathers and mothers and get back to the principles of raising our children. We shouldn't depend on the schools and the justice system to do it. We got to raise our children. And I believe many of these children were of a religious sect, and we got to get back to training them, and the churches have got to do a better job. But law and order should return, and we need policymakers who are going to enforce those laws and write those laws and make sure that they are enforced and make sure the law is being upheld. And that's what I'm willing to do in Congress.
Dr. Giles.
Enforce the laws. I mean, if you take some of these young kids that have not had proper parenting, because it goes back to the family's being undermined, we got to get back to our good Christian values and get them back in and train them up right. But if they spent a night in jail, or they had their handcuffs put on, or if they had to lose a privilege like they had, like speeding, for instance, when they're on a probation license, and have it taken away for 6 months. You have to have a little bit of accountability in there, and a lot of our youth have not been held accountable. That's where our problem is. The police, the law and order, we don't want to be mean, we don't want to be cruel, but we want to hold them accountable. And if they hit somebody, that's assault. Whatever the assault laws are, obey them, give them a little bit of time, they might think about not doing it, and then they'll tell their friends, don't do it, because jail is not pretty.
Thank you, Dr. Jasser, the Goons.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked this question. I think it's very important that we understand that the woke community has basically become apologetic, that anything goes, that everybody's a victim, that somehow, and this ultimately creates a climate in which it erodes our institutions. And I've been involved, I want to mention, Cooper had a video in which he went in front of a recruitment station and said that, what would solve the Goons' problem is if they join the military. As a former naval officer, and I've been actually involved in an organization that's trying to get wokeness out of our military institutions because it's destroying they can't even use the word terrorism in teaching military academies right now. And ultimately, we want our best and brightest going into the military. We want the rule of law telling the Goons that they will be punished and put in jail for any violence, and no longer have a legal system that dismisses the violence that occurred during the riots of the Black Lives Matter movement and others. And this culture needs to shift back to one of laws and family values.
President Donald Trump can be a polarizing figure. I think we can all agree. He also seems to be a gravitational one. Republicans have changed their stances about him. after he won office. And we've seen politicians change their policies to align with, or what they perceive to align with, Trump's positions to be. In office, how much fealty would you have to Donald Trump? And could you conceive of a way that maybe you would hold fast to a policy position that Donald Trump might not agree with? We'll start with you, Pastor Davis.
Well, thank you very much for that question. Yes, I'm 100% Trumper. I've been with Trump from the start. I saw his policies were good for the country. His message was powerful. His message was law and order. His message was about prosperity. Didn't have to do with race or gender. It was a great focus, and we need to get back to that so desperately as a country. So yes, I'm the only candidate on stage tonight who was there to support his message on Jan 6th, because I felt like the elections were unfair, and I wanted to hold my First Amendment there during that rally. But yes, I support President Donald Trump. We have a couple of anti-Trumpers here on the stage that now are Trump supporters, and that's really good. I know people have a chance to repent and get their lives back on track and get with the message. But I have been with President Donald Trump from day one, and I do believe we don't have time to test someone and see if they're going to test or be with the Trump policies, but we need to get proven fighters like Pastor Jerone Davison, who was at January 6th, to stand with the Trump policies so we can move our country forward.
Dr. Giles.
I support President Trump since the time he came down the escalator. I would support all of his policies. And you asked if there was one that I wouldn't support. If he goes against something in here, I don't think I would support him. But it's not in his character. He wants to make America great. He believes in the rule of law. He believes in the Constitution. He's a God-fearing man. He prayed with my pastors. So, I would support Trump just about all the way around. I have in the past. I have him on my website. I can't imagine him doing something that's not going to make America great again.
Dr. Jasser, do you see any daylight between you and Trump?
I'm not understanding where you're asking me this from. The point is that I would support. I'm the first candidate on this panel here to endorse President Trump, and I would simply ask the voters: are you tired of inflation? Are you tired of a hemorrhaging border? Are you tired of lawlessness? America was better under President Trump. America had Abraham Accords. We were in peace. Now we have wars breaking out with Hamas and ultimately the funding of Hamas from Iran. The maximum pressure policy of Secretary Pompeo and President Trump was put away by Biden, and we see ultimately a weakened America as a result. So yes, I've been a supporter. I will support President Trump on policies that I have nationally and locally on the vast majority of his policies, even the so-called Muslim ban. I spoke up and said this is not a Muslim ban. It was about actually countries that were breeding and spreading terror around the world, and this is why I supported him in that.
Mr. Cooper on Trump.
I have my hand.
Oh, yes, but he needs to answer this question. We'll get to you.
So it's a comical and enjoyable endeavor for this question. You asked specifically where fealty lies, right? To be clear.
Correct.
And there's a lot of talk about how all of the candidates on this stage are loyal to Donald Trump, including Dr. Jasser down there, who quit being a national delegate in 2016 because he couldn't vote for Trump. He couldn't bring himself to do it, and also wrote op-eds about how he was unfit to be president, along with being a globalist that was encouraging more Syrian refugees at the time. Now, I'm not done with my statement, Doctor.
That
you
was
can
when
just
you were
hold for
getting
1
Green
second.
Party ballots?
I'm not done
The
with my
Radical
statement.
Socialist Party?
I am the only candidate on this stage that was endorsed by Donald Trump last cycle.
Oh, God.
But I will tell you this, my fealty and loyalty not only relies and lives with the Republican Party conservative values, it's with you. It's with the voters in this district. And as long as Donald Trump is our nominee, I will be supporting him. I will be pushing forward with the values that he represents, and I will continue to stand with the voters in this district that need help. Every single day we struggle with rising gas prices, groceries,
Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
energy.
Thank you. That sounds like a closing, which is open. And now the man in my ear is telling me it's time for closing statements. Each of you get 1 minute to keep us on time. I'll have to politely cut you off when it's over. Dr. Jasser, you get the first closing statement.
We've talked about a lot of problems here. There are millions rushing into this country because of the hope that America is. We need to elect a candidate to Congress that isn't missing in action, that has had a real job, vice Greg Stanton, that really hasn't other than his government jobs, and ultimately rebuild America's promise and renew America's promise in what we are. I believe in Americanism. I believe I can hit the ground running to be a leader, not to have on-the-job training. And I think you've seen today the difference in the clarity of what we stand for and what I can bring to the table as a member of Congress. So ultimately, it's important. I ask for your vote. I ask for your support to join the movement. I've been endorsed by a broad array of Americans, from Charlie Kirk to Senator Kyle to Governor Brewer, Sal DeCiccio, Hugh Holman, Hugh Hewitt, and Glenn Beck. This is the type of movement I'm creating and helping build. Go to z4az.com to become part of this movement and realize that I can bring success to this district, to Mesa and Tempe and others that other candidates cannot. So thank you.
Mr. Cooper, you get the next closing statement for 1 minute.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Kelly Cooper, and I've stood here today and I've been on many other debate stages and talked about what I believe to be the major issues in this district. I've given you my credentials over and over and over again about signing the front of paychecks and having a job. There are folks on this stage that don't know what it means to have a job, that have never created a job and don't know what it means to be responsible for those people that work with you. I believe the American dream is fading, and I believe that you need a candidate like myself that understands the issues that are facing you today, all of the struggles, all of your hopes and dreams, and the wishes that you have for your children and grandchildren on into the future, and can help restore the American dream. Because while all these other candidates are going to pretend that they're a certain thing, I am the true, real deal, and I will never back down from the fight of making sure your American dream is protected. Go visit me at kellycooperarizona.com. The only endorsement that I would ask for today is yours.
Dr. David Giles, you have a minute.
As your representative in D.C., I would bring wisdom and my experience in there. I grew up in a Christian family, in a patriotic family. My father dropped out of 8th grade to go fight in World War II. He was blessed by a letter from the Pope and from the President on their 50th wedding anniversary. They were devoted, taught me to learn more. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in electrical engineering for my technical abilities. I have a Master's of Business Administration for my business abilities. I worked for the largest oil company in the world and had over 10,000 people under my wing. I have a pilot's license. I have followed my dreams in theology. I have a bachelor's degree in theology, master's degree, doctorate degree,
Thank you.
and a PhD.
Thank you. And Pastor Davison,
Thank you
take
so
us
very
home.
much for having me. I have to change my closing statement because of some of the things that was offered here. And I must offer this sincere closing and this warning. America, we have been had so many times, and I know you're tired of it. We send people to Washington, and they get there and they stab us in the back. You have a proven fighter in me. You saw that I was at January 6th. You saw that I was Trumper from the beginning. I believe the doctor is not safe for this country. I don't believe he's good for going to Congress. I believe he's going to turn his back on Trump based on his past. I don't believe Cooper's a true Trumper all the way. We need to move forward as a country and no more attacks on President Donald Trump so that we can get this country moving forward. I believe that I am the safe vote for CD4. Greg Stanton, it's time for him to retire. It's time for him to move aside so that we can get the economy here moving and the people's lives moving back to prosperity. My name is Jerone Davison. I want you to stand with me and help us restore the American dream. JeroneForCongress.com.
Thank the four of you for this debate, and thank you for joining us, listening and watching.